Well, today we've got Stephen Marshall. He is the man about town at the moment. He's the leader of the opposition, giving the government plenty of curry. He's in the studio with us, so welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Anthony.
Well, mate, it's been a few weeks since you've been the man. So what's it been like?
Yeah, I've just clocked up 5 weeks. It's been really exciting. It's a great opportunity. I never thought it would actually happen. Certainly not like this anyway. But no, absolutely enjoying the job.
Now, any big muck-ups or anything that's gone, you know, because you're just new to the job?
I am just new to the job, and been lots of long hours, and it is a steep learning curve, there's no doubt about it. Sort of, some things don't go as well as you would like them to have gone, some things go really well. So, but no, it's I think it's been a solid start. I've really enjoyed the support of my parliamentary colleagues, the Labor Party, and just the people in general. People are stopping me in the street saying, good on you, give it a go. So really loving it.
Good on you. Now, Stephen, I don't really want to cover off on the political side. I'm really quite interested in getting stuck into what's happening with property and development, what the government would, what the opposition would do if you're in government.
Sure.
So let's get right into it. Firstly, can you give us an outline of what you think is happening out there in real estate world in this state as it relates to you guys?
Well, certainly there's a couple of reforms that the government's got in terms of the parliament at the moment, some stuff around residential tenancies. They've got some bills going through the parliament. Also on the other side with the real estate reform bill, which is going through. So there's quite a bit of action in terms of the real estate sector in the parliament at the moment. With both lots of legislation, the government, we're working with the government. There are some concerns that we've raised, especially with relationship to the real estate reform bill. We're a little bit concerned that some of the changes that the government are proposing are overly prescriptive. We've got to always remember in these equations that there's a buyer and a seller, and we can't just look after one side of the equation. So we've foreshadowed some amendments, and we'll see what happens in the coming weeks.
So just to give us a bit of a feel for it, when would it be likely that that ends up in law? You know, is that
very
a week,
soon.
2 weeks, 3
Yeah,
weeks?
very soon. So the first bill, the Residential Tenancies Tribunal, Residential Tenancies bill is in the upper house at the moment, so it's going through the final stages at the moment. And by and large, we are very supportive of the bill. There's always at the final negotiations some small pieces that we want to... Bit of argy-bargy, but that will probably go through in the next week or so. The other bill, the real estate reform bill, is in the lower house. As I said, we'll be foreshadowing some of our amendments. We're still out consulting with the industry, and we'll be making our position very clear in the coming weeks.
Now, I'm not sure how much detail you are aware of the residential tenancies, but that was so out of date and way overdue. Did they get through, or does it look like the PET bond is going to get through okay? Oh,
look, there's a whole pile of things which are in there. Look, by and large, we're probably 90% in agreement between Labor and Liberal.
I think most of it's pretty good.
It is good, and as you say, it was a reform that was long overdue. So we're very supportive of that. There's probably just some things about, whether or not the landlord should be legislated to make sure that they provide, washing machine instruction manuals and just some things like that, which we think, maybe
a little bit doable.
Some things that are difficult. We're just saying, let's be practical about this. Yes, the reform's long overdue, but let's make sure that what we come up with is actually practical.
And that's one that's come up a lot in the industry, because essentially, for those of you that are not aware, an owner of a property would have to supply, by law, instruction manuals how to use appliances that may be 10 or 15 years old. That just won't happen. So it won't matter how much you put in law, it won't happen. So why would you make a law that can't happen?
Yep.
It just doesn't make any sense.
That's one of the things. One of the other areas is just about access. If a tenant wants to do some changes to the property, what their requirement is to inform the landlord, especially around the NBN rollout that's going through at the moment. What are the implications? And so some of that is quite technical. We've got to get it right. When you open a bill like this, you don't want to rush anything through. You want to make sure that you get it right, because it might be some time, often decades, before it actually gets opened and looked at again.
Now, Stephen, let's look on the bigger picture. There's some new branding with the state that's happened. Let's get your view on that. That's pretty fresh news.
Yeah, well, I was at the launch last week. It was a fantastic event. Look, time will tell how good this brand is, but certainly there's no position from the Liberal Party that this is a waste of money, we want to get rid of it. That's not our position at all. This was an initiative of the Economic Development Board They are very concerned that our export sort of sales aren't going as well as they have historically. They said that the brand is a real issue. They commissioned this work. Ken Cato did the work. He's a fantastic, well-regarded international designer. He's put this forward, and now
is he South Australian, by the way?
I think he's Victorian, actually. But
don't you love it?
Look, we did use some South Australian content in the delivery of this project, and look, the issue is...
What's that? The politicians launching it?
Look, the issue is on this one. It's over to the people of South Australia now. It's over to the businesses, and it's over to the individuals to use the brand. If they use the brand, it will be successful.
So just on there, it's an open platform. So essentially, if I, as an owner of a company, want to just blast that out, it's all the artwork. We can get hold of all the artwork and
the style guides. Everything will be over to you. So, and there's a lot of different ways that you can use the logo. And
I actually quite liked it, by the way.
Yeah, and a lot of people did. And interestingly, a lot of people from business got it immediately. Look, we often see this when a business goes through a new brand. There's a lot of people, a lot of customers says, "Oh, I quite like the old brand." They sort of remember it, but then over time they adjust to it, and we're hopeful that that's what will happen here.
Yep. So was that a collaboration between you and the Labor Party? Or?
No, it was an initiative of the Economic Development Board. Darren Thomas put a huge amount of effort into it. He's an extraordinarily successful South Australian businessman and a great advocate for South Australia. And look, he really put his heart and soul into it. We're very happy to support it.
Great. Now, so we got the brand sorted out.
Yep, we've got the brand sorted out.
Now, on the way back from the airport, if you come along North Terrace, you'd feel pretty pumped up at the moment because there's, 9 or 10 cranes in the air. Just tell me about how you feel we're tracking in terms of, how do we feel about ourselves?
Well, it's an interesting one. Look, at the end of the day, if you look at the statistics, the national growth figures were out last week, and they show that South Australia's gone backwards for the last 2 quarters. So we've stopped treading water and we're actually taking on water. Look, we've got to do a lot more to grow our economy. Yes, there are cranes on the skyline, but by and large they're government projects. What we really need to do in South Australia is get the economy going, get the private sector out there, get them spending money. That's the thing that we've got to do to grow our economy and grow our prosperity.
Now, without the political side of it, but this is, I'm trying to tread gently through this, Stephen, but there was a bit of a report of, projects not going ahead, which were government, not funded, but they were certainly government supported. And there was a bit of stuff happening. Explain to me what the real story behind it, uncut version.
Well, the issue is that...
perhaps tell the viewers, in case they're not aware of it, you start from scratch.
Oh, well, the government's been talking up, their support for, their new vision for South Australia to get more people into the CBD, and we support that. In fact, it was a Liberal initiative for some stamp duty concessions to try to drive people back living in the CBD. They then changed their legislation to include some other developments. That was done, and that was of course supported as well. But one of those developments this week, it was announced that wouldn't be going ahead in the original configuration. So
it's 45 Park.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so look, I think we've just got to be realistic. There are tough times at the moment. We've seen a number of developments. In the last week or so, McCracken, Frueville, the Gilberton development. And look, I think it's quite clear that our economy is not going as well as it could. I don't want to talk South Australia down because I think it's the best place in the world, but we really do need to get our economy moving ahead, and that's fundamental to my vision for South Australia.
And what about regional South Australia with all the mining centres and that? Have you any sort of exposure to that? Have you heard anything that's positive, negative, or what's going on?
Well, look, there's a huge amount of opportunity in the regions. There's no doubt about that, and we've got some exciting ideas that we've got. I can't sort of hard to sort of sit here
now, this is the right
when you've
place
got the
to
camera on you, to say, I've got this great thing to tell you about, Anthony. But look, there's plenty of opportunity in the regions.
It's all right,
and
you can.
As a business person, you come in, and if you go into a new business, the first thing you do is you look at the balance sheet and you see where all your assets are. And I look at the South Australian balance sheet and I say, look at all those fantastic assets that exist in regional South Australia. There's so much opportunity there. I'm not sure whether we're getting enough out of those regions. I'm not sure that we're doing enough to support the regions and basically get the return that we should for those assets. So a big part of what we'll be doing in the lead up to the 2014 election is to demonstrate to the people that, look, a new government would have a different approach to realising a return on those assets, and some of them are based in regional South Australia.
So let's say you're a property owner in South Australia And the big issue for people, and I basically ran into a friend of mine who owns a lot of property in the state who's been selling it, and not residential, commercial, because of land tax.
Yep.
He's actually sold a lot of property and invested in other states. You know, is there, it's a cash cow, but is it something with a state that's really struggling for funding? Is it something that the opposition has got some clever way of getting rid of that burden to start people investing actually back in the state?
Well, land tax is a killer. I think the Liberal Party has stated that over an extended period of time. The problem with the land tax regime in South Australia is just so different from the rest of Australia. So when you look at our stamp duty and when you look at our payroll tax and some of the other state government burdens on business, they're reasonably commensurate with the rest of Australia. We might be a little bit higher than one state and a little bit lower. On land tax, we're the worst, and we're worse by a long way.
Yeah.
And so when you're an investor and you're looking at making an investment in property, you've got to look at your returns. And you've got to say to yourself, well, where am I going to get a return in South Australia? What's my return going to be in Northern Territory or Queensland? And people take that into account. So that's not good for our economy if people are actually leaving, taking their money out, as you say, and putting it into another economy. I don't like to hear that story. So we've got to be, doing all that we can in the Parliament to plug that gap, that leakage out of our economy.
How?
Well, we'll be announcing all of our policies up in the lead up to the next election. It's very difficult. You can't get rid of it overnight. People have come to expect the level of services they get from the state. You can't just cut out a major revenue source. You can't do that. But, we've got to become more cost competitive in South Australia. There's no point in us being the highest business tax state in Australia. We've been the highest business tax state in Australia for the last 4 years, and that's not doing our economy any good. We've got that handbrake on the economy in South Australia. We've got to take it off.
Stephen, just to sort of wrap up, so for all the property people that are watching this,
yes,
why would they vote for you versus Jay and his guys?
Well, they know what they're going to get with Jay and the Labor team. They've had it for 11 years, and they can look at that and say, well, do we want any more of that? By contrast, I think the best thing that we could do for the real estate sector, the property sector, the commercial building sector, is to get the economy going. That's the number one thing that we actually need to do in South Australia. Now we've stopped. We're really stagnant in South Australia, and in fact over the last 6 months we've gone backwards. Well, that's not acceptable. Under a Liberal government, we'll be very much focused on the economy, growing our economy and making a more prosperous South Australia.
How?
Well, there's still over a year till the next election. We'll be giving everybody plenty of opportunity to make a very informed decision on what we're doing. I announced the week before last that we'd be setting a vision through to 2036, which is the bicentenary of South Australia. We don't think we should be thinking in these 1 to 5 year cycles. We need to think about what sort of state we want to be and where we want to be in 2036. And the first part of that was that I announced that on the 3rd of April I'll be holding an economic growth forum in South Australia, and that'll be a great opportunity to bring together people to look at the general areas that we're heading, to verify that and to have further input to create a more prosperous South Australia. And
just finally, the urban consolidation and the new planning laws relating to multi-storey along a lot of the arterial roads. Sure. Are you guys backing that in?
Well, I'm not sure that the government's backing it in. They've just announced that this could be a major planning review in South Australia. Interestingly though, they're not going to tell us the outcome of that until the end of 2014, so well after the next election. We're still at this stage trying to sit down with the government to try and find out exactly what this planning review is going to be, what it's going to involve, whether it's going to involve the strategic growth areas that they've already identified, whether it's going to involve the 30-year plan that they've got. We really are a little bit in the dark. We're seeking a meeting from the government as soon as possible.
Well, Stephen, stick around. We've got more questions for you.
Excellent.
All right, mate. Now let's go to Going, Going, Gone.